This is a simple main menu. I've created a Unity UI system in just a few minutes. Let's jump to Unity and create it. Before we start, be sure to design your menu layout first. For example, this is my sketch project with finished menu design. By doing so, I know how everything will look, and the process of creating that in Unity will be much quicker. As you might have seen in my previous tutorials, here is a simple game called Jumping John, which has one scene called Game. Let's start by creating a new scene that will be our main menu and call it, you guessed it, Main Menu. Open it. Here, we'll create a new canvas. Just right-click on the hierarchy, UI, Canvas. Let's double-click it to center it on the screen and then also add our background image the same way. I'll resize that image to fill the entire screen. To do that, click on the Anchor presets and while holding Alt or Option key, select this double stretch option. That way, no matter what size of the game window is, the background will stretch to fill the entire screen. If you'd like to know more about anchors and how to resize your UI, make sure to check out my other video. Finally, let's set our background image and give the game object title like background. Great! Now, time for the logo and its background. Create a new image, then resize it to fill the entire width of the screen and change its anchors to the top stretch. We won't be using any sprite here, just change the color to black and give it some transparency, in my case 180. As always, also name it. In this case, logo background. After that, create another image that will be our logo itself. Make sure to create it as a parent of our newly created logo background and give it a sprite with our logo text. To make sure it's sized correctly, select Set Native Size and if needed, move it to the correct position. Let's call our game object the logo. And finally, time to move to the most important part, buttons. As you may have seen before, our main menu will only have 3 buttons. Start the game, Settings and Exit. Let's create a new button for each menu item. Right-click in the hierarchy, UI and select Button. It's too small, so I'll change its size to 550 by 120. Time to format the text inside of it. I'll give it 65 font size, Roboto font, and set the text itself to Start. As you can see, based on our mockup, the only thing we're missing is the slick rounded corners. In fact, I've already prepared the image that will replace that generic sprite. It's called White Rounded Rectangle. But after I change it, you can see that something is off and our rounded rectangle is squished. That's because I haven't scaled it correctly. Look, here for the example are the Kene game assets that contain different UI elements. Notice that big boxes that have a square shape and will not fit most of the UI systems. But when you check the example of the same graphics assets, you'll see that Kene made them bigger without stretching them. To achieve that, we need to set in Unity a border that will tell which parts can be stretched and which ones should be left untouched, like the rounded corners. That way, you'll be able to resize that shape to anything you like. Let's jump back to Unity and check how it should be done. Find your texture in the project panel and in the inspector, click Sprite Editor button. Here you can find these small green lines around the image. To make them a little bit more visible in the video, I've changed their color. They are the same thing I told you just a second before. The only thing we need to do is to resize them that way that both in the center and on the edges are elements that now it will be 52 from all of the sides. Okay, so when that is ready, click Apply, close the window, go back to our button image and change its type from simple to sliced. Great! Now we have a perfect rounded corners. To finish things up, let's add a little animation to our button. Instead of color tint transition, we'll be using animation type. Just click Auto Generate Animation, select the location for it, I suggest Animations folder, and click Save. Unity will prepare everything for us. When we open the Animation tab, you will find there 5 different states, like normal, highlighted, or selected. By changing anything in any of that state, we can create a simple transitions. I'll show you how it works. When we go back to our mockup, you can see that when I hover mouse over a button, a white box around it appears and text becomes black. But when the button is untouched, the white box disappears and the text becomes white. Let's do the same in Unity. In Animation, make sure that we're editing normal state. Click the Record button and make all the changes that should be visible when the button is not highlighted. In my case, I'll set the transparency of an image to 0 and the color of the text to white. That's it for normal. Now switch to highlighted, click Record and do the opposite. Change image transparency to full and text color to black. After that, we can check if our animation is working. Just press play in Unity and then highlight the button. It looks great already, but in my opinion, the animation should be just a little bit faster. To do that, open the Animator tab and for each transition arrow, change its transition duration. In my case, I think 0.1 should do the trick. Much better. Now, when the button design is finished, let's duplicate it 2 times and move to the correct positions. Change its text to Settings, Quit, and finally, to tie everything up, name our buttons in hierarchy. Start, Settings, and Exit. Great! I will now add a small black rounded box around our buttons. To do that, as always, right-click in Hierarchy, UI, and Image. We'll use the same white rounded rectangle image and give it a black color with 70% of transparency. Now, let's make sure it's sized correctly. Name it Buttons Background and move up in hierarchy to place it below our buttons. Also, to keep everything tidy, let's set all of our buttons as the children of that object. Great! And now, the last UI component we're missing is the Settings menu. As you can see, our mockup does not have any settings controls because I don't want to focus on them today. So in Unity, we can simply duplicate buttons background and this time call it the Settings background. Here I'll only leave the last button and I'll change its text to back. Also, to make it a bit smaller, we can simply change its size to something like 0.7 in both X and Y. Also, to make it more obvious what screen we're at, let's add a simple text element. So right-click in the hierarchy, UI, and select text. Once again, I'll change its font to Roboto, font size to 65, color to white, and of course the text itself to settings. Let's resize it and give our game object a nice title like settings tab. Great! So now it's time to change some of the behaviors of our main menu. To do this, first we need to disable our settings background object. You can do that by simply clicking that little checkbox next to the object name. Now, find the settings button and add two on-click events. The first event, we need to link settings background by simply dragging it in from the scene hierarchy. Then, from this drop-down, select game object, set active, and mark it as true. Then repeat the same step for buttons background, but this time game object, set active, and set it as false. Now let's quickly switch to the settings background. Find our back button, also add two on-click events and dragging buttons background and settings background, and also set them to corresponding set active options. Great! Now I'll only reset our background visibility and let's test everything out. As you can see, our simple navigation is working as intended, but we have still one more job to do. Let's make exit and start game buttons work. To do that, I'll click on the canvas and create a new script called main menu. Let's create a new method, type public void exit button and open brackets. To close our game, we can simply call application.quit. Because in the editor we won't be able to see it, let's also add debug.log and type a simple message like game closed. Next, let's add another method, so once again, public void start game, open brackets, and here we like to change the game scene. Before we can do that, at the very top of our document, add using Unity engine .scene management. Now go back to our method and type scene manager .load scene and specify the name of our scene. In my case, it will be just game. Great! Now let's save it, go back to Unity and assign both start and exit buttons to the correct methods. To do that, just select the start button, add on-click event, link it to canvas, a game object that has our newly created script, and finally select from the list main menu start game. Do everything the same for the exit button, but this time select exit game. Okay, I think it's time to test everything up. Press play and click on this exit button. As you can see, here in the console below, we can see our message, and in case of the actual game, our application will be closed. Now let's test out the start game button. Click on it and we have a problem. Why Unity haven't switched the screen? That's because we need to add it to scenes in build. Just press File, Build options, and from the Project tab, drag both menu scene and game scene. Remember that the first scene in that list will be loaded on the game start, so make sure it's our main menu